Hey guys, welcome back to Live What You Love. So today we're out here learning how to try to fly fish. I know absolutely nothing about fly fishing. This guy, one of my good buddies, his name's Trevor. He's been fly fishing since he was a kid. He's gonna kind of give us the rundown.
So first thing you have to learn is how to put the rod together. Seems like it would be super obvious and like you wouldn't need to learn that, especially if you've fished before. But some rods are different, like this one, for example. You can see on the seams on the rod that it doesn't come all the way together, so it looks kind of funky.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you don't want to force things on. Fly fishing is all about being finesse and pretty. So a weird thing that my dad taught me when I was younger that now I still do is you have a little bit of oil on the side of your nose. And so if you rub that on the rod, it'll make it so that the pieces slide together way easier.
That's such a cool tip. So Trevor, how do we put the reel on?
So that's another thing. A lot of people when they're spinner fishing will switch it over and they'll be reeling with their right hand. With fly fishing, if you're right-handed, you want to have your right hand on the rod.
Okay.
So you're going to put the reel on with your reel facing to the left so that you can reel with your left hand and control the rod with your right.
Okay. It just screws in just like a normal one.
This is a little sleeve that holds it in place, just like a spinner reel.
It's a beautiful rod, man.
It's on.
And tell us about this rod. Didn't you make this?
Yeah, so this rod, my dad has always made, he home makes all of our rods, and this was one that he got as a gift from his brother. Is just a straight piece of graphite, and then he taught me how to wrap it all, put all the eyes on, epoxy the whole thing. We handmade the grip here so that it fits my hand exactly how I want it to. Super fun.
It's amazing. Okay, so Trevor, I'm noticing that the fly line on your reel is like a thick yellow color, and then you have a more translucent color on the end. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so you've got, at the very tip, you have something appropriately named tippet. That's going to be your thinnest stuff, and it's going to be the stuff that you go through a lot because as you bite flies off and put new ones on, you're going to be using it up.
Okay.
And then behind that, you have another clear section that's a little bit thicker, that's leader, which you use for regular spinner fishing. And then the leader connects onto your fly line.
So fly line is juicy. That's thick stuff.
It's thick. And then behind the fly line, you'll have backing. And so it's going to be just a little bit more. It's typically a different color so that when a fish takes off, you know when you hit your backing.
I see. So there's 4 sections.
Yep.
Okay.
You're going to have tippet, leader, fly line, and backing.
Perfect. When you're feeding this in, is there kind of any tips to make it easier?
For sure, yeah. So if you look at the end of the tippet, it's super small, like probably can't even see it on camera, pretty much invisible. And if it's windy, it can be a pain to try to get it to go through
the eyelets.
Right, and so you want to go to where you can see it, to where you have your fly line, and then just grab onto the knot, and you can feed the knot through the eyes much easier.
Good tip. So you just told me something kind of goofy about fly rods. What's going on?
So the classic fly fisherman that you'll see like on the movies or something is this old guy. I mean, my dad's getting up there in age, he's kind of the same way. You don't need much strength to fly fish. Your rod is they're made to do the work for you. And so as we're doing all of this and I'm showing you how to cast, we won't have anything on the end of the line. It's got no fly, no weight, no nothing, and just the weight of the line and the flex of the rod is what throws the line out.
So can you cast just as far with an empty line as with like a fly on the end?
Yep, in fact, most of the time it's easier if you have lighter flies on the end than if you have something heavier.
That's so different. Okay, so at this point, Trevor has run the line all the way up through all the eyelets, and then he's got about a rod's length of line, and then he's got the other subsections of line that we can't see on camera. But how do you get to where you always see people whipping the line back and forth and they have like 40 yards of line? How do you get from having just a little bit to that much?
Yeah, so the trick with that is that you're going to do it as you're casting. So when I cast, it's going to pull on the line.
Okay, so show us how to cast real quick.
So casting, don't use your wrist.
Don't use your wrist.
In fact, a lot of times when people are learning, we'll put a rubber band so that they can't use their wrist.
Okay, let me show
you put it around the rod or a hair tie or whatever you need to just remind you not to bend your wrist.
So have the rod and your forearm just in line. Yep.
And then you want to use just your elbow. You don't want to use your shoulder. I use my shoulder more than I should, but whatever, we all have our problems, I guess. And then your goal with casting is you want to cast from, we call it 10 to 2.
10
so
to
if you
2.
imagine a clock like this, you want to cast from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and you never want your rod to be going 9 to 3.
I gotcha.
You want to stay up in the top part of it.
Yep.
And then as you're casting,
So right now, no line is coming out as he's whipping it back and forth, and he still has only a little bit of the yellow line, like his fly line, out. So he's not letting any of that out yet. So how do we let more out?
so then as you're casting, it'll pull out. So every time you cast forward, it'll get rid of slack.
Yep.
So every time you pull back, you can pull more line out.
Okay. So as you're pulling your arm backwards, your left hand is pulling line off of the reel.
Yep, just like that. And you can just keep going until you get to the distance that you want to cast.
Okay, perfect. We now know how to kind of let line out.
Yep.
And we want to stay between 10 and 2. You don't want to go back too far. Is there anything else to kind of look out for as we're doing this?
For sure. So timing is a big deal with this. You want to pull back when your line's forward and pull forward when your line is laid all the way back.
Okay.
If you go too early, you'll hear it. So if I cast too early, you'll hear.
Oh yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it sounds like a whip.
And if that whip noise is happening and you have a fly on the end, when the end of that line goes really fast, a lot of times it'll just kick the hook off and you'll have to retie on a new fly.
Will you explain to us what a fly is?
Yeah, so flies are what we're going to use instead of lures for fishing.
Okay.
So it's going to be little hooks normally that are made to imitate bugs in the water.
Okay.
Okay, it's workshop time.
It's workshop time. Gotta get lessons from the pro here, guys. Okay, so first time, so don't hate in the comments or anything. So 10 to 2.
Yep.
So let's just start out 10 to 2, real easy.
Yep.
And then what's the next thing I should add in?
So the next thing is you're gonna want to get line out. You can do that either each cast, when you cast back, pull some line out from the reel.
Okay.
Or if you're feeling lazy, you can just pull a whole bunch out at the beginning and then let it out slowly.
I see. So pull back. Oh, I see.
Yep. You'll hear the reel release it.
And then out.
Yep. Just like that.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Do you need to kind of accelerate faster when you pull line out?
You don't have to. You should be given enough power each time that you cast that you shouldn't need to do too much extra. But you do want the very beginning of your stroke when you're pulling back to be fast, and the very beginning of your going forward to be quick.
Oh, I'm noticing. Don't use your wrist.
Yep.
I think I'm kind of noticing.
You'll start to hear that whipping sound if you use your wrist.
Yeah. Okay.
Doing a great job.
Get the timing on pulling line out from the reel.
Uh-huh.
And getting a smooth cast forwards. How can I help that?
Yeah, it's something that just kind of takes a lot of practice, but if you want, quit casting for just a sec, and if you just want to sit there and just pull out maybe 15 feet of line. And then the other way you can do it is leave it pulled up by your hand, and then you can just control how much you let out since it's already away from the reel.
Awesome.
So then you can have a whole bunch of line, and then you can just slowly let it through your hand as you cast.
Okay.
So if you have a bunch of sticks behind you or you're not able to cast like you want, you can pull a whole bunch of line out, and then you can just let it out, controlling with your left hand instead of letting the reel hold on to the line.
Huh. Okay, so let's try. So that's why you always see guys holding this.
You always, they call it controlling your line.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is probably going to be brutal, but I'm going to try it.
Yep, and then just manage your line.
Oh, I see.
Just like that.
So when I cast, so that popped when I cast, so that I probably just lost the fly.
There's a good chance. Yep.
Okay.
And then your dad will look over at you annoyed because he just tied it.
He spent 6 hours making that fly and just trashed it. All right, so I don't know if you guys see this mess of junk he has going on, but there's line upon line right here.
Yeah. So this is something that'll happen to me sometimes when I'm fishing. If I'm fishing a long ways out, so I'll be fishing 20 yards out, trying to get a fish, and then I'll see a fish jump right in close to me. So I'll strip a whole bunch of line in, and then this will just be sitting in the water behind me, and I don't care about it because I can just control the line.
Because you're just holding it. I see.
And then if you see a fish further out, and you're back out.
Dude, that's a long cast.
Yeah, you can by using your left hand to control it. Now, also a lot of times my line will get tangled around my net, around my foot, around a branch. So it's not the best thing to do, but if you want to have quick control about where you're casting, it's a really nice little tip.
That's sick. This is answering a lot of questions that I've had. Like, why is there always a pile of line by the guy's left foot?
Casting kind of weird because I'm trying not to cast straight back because I don't want to catch it on the hill behind me.
I don't know if y'all can hear him, but he's saying that because he's on a gradient, this is a pretty steep hill, so he's having to cast a little funky so that the line, when he's bringing it back, isn't going to hit this hill. Hey, you can get it out there pretty good, man. When you're casting, so instead of with a rod and reel that's just like a spinning like setup, you know, where you're just gonna reel in kind of casually, or you could pop it or something like that. Now, when you're casting this, is the fly sinking or is it staying on the surface?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we're back at the house and we've got some examples to show, it'll make more sense. But this is underwater.
This is underwater.
Normally, if you're doing this, you would have a strike indicator on the line.
Okay.
You'd be in an area that has current, so you'd cast, you'd be watching your strike indicator bob down.
What's a strike indicator?
So it's going to be just kind of like a bubble. If you've ever heard of people call it a bubble, it's just a little piece of plastic that you tie onto your line.
Okay.
And it's anchored in place. And then when a fish takes whatever is on your line, you'll see the indicator drop underwater.
Yeah, so it's like a bobber.
Yep, just like a bobber.
Yeah.
I guess we just like to be fancy.
You got to dress it up. So as you're reeling, so talk to us about this. So instead of kind of reeling in on the actual reel,
right,
like you're not reeling in like you would a spin cast. You're just kind of pulling the line and dropping it at your left foot.
Yeah, once again, that might just be a bad habit of mine, but I like to have ready access to lots of line.
Okay.
So you could just as easily be reeling in and out as you're going. But like if we're sitting here and I'm just fishing out at this distance, just 10, 15 feet in front of us, you're casting up and back, watching your strike indicator, and I see something that's halfway out in the river. I don't want to have to sit here and strip a whole bunch of line trying to get it. If I see something a long ways out, I give it a hard cast or two and let line come out, and I'm out to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it seems like it's more dynamic to have extra line by your left foot than to have it all in the reel, because you can get it out faster.
Yep, and it all just depends on, like, if you've got snags next to you and your line's gonna get caught in them, it may not be the best move, but a lot of times it can help with you being more reactive to what's going on in the water.
As we're doing the fly fishing, we know how to rig everything up. Yep. We now know how to cast.
Yep.
We know that there's surface baits and there's some underwater baits, and we're gonna go over those baits in a later video. But one thing we haven't talked about is action.
Yeah.
So kind of how are we working the bait once it's in the water?
Yeah, so that'll also be something we can continue to talk about when we talk about the other kinds of flies. But for something like this, if this were a faster flowing area of water, the river's gonna be doing the action for you for the most part.
Gotcha.
So you're gonna be casting, so if we imagine that this was flowing pretty quickly this way.
Left to right.
You would cast up high left,
okay,
and then your fly would sink if you were fishing underwater, and it would drift along this way. And then once it gets to the end of that, you pick it back up, cast it back out this way, and let the river kind of do the action for you.
Okay, so the current is what's moving your bait. So you're just gonna kind of go with whatever the flow is.
Yep.
Okay.
And then your job as the river's moving is to manage your line, because as you cast all the way up here, as it's moving towards you, you're having line coming at you. So you want to be pulling that in.
I see.
So when the fish bites and you want to set the hook,
okay,
if you've got 20 feet of line piled up in the water, you're
right,
not going to be able to catch it.
So managing your line is making sure that you don't have too much slack so that it will inhibit you being able to set the hook whenever you get a bite. Okay, so Trevor, in a few days, a little more than a week. We're going to Colorado. We're going to be trying out fly fishing. That's kind of why you're being so awesome by showing us how to do all this.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. If we have to get a rod, so I don't have a rod right now, what kind of specifics are you looking for when you're first getting into it that'll kind of help you have an easier time?
Yeah, so just a few things that you want to be looking for. You want to look at the length of the rod, and then they're marked by weights. So I don't know if you can see this. This is a 9'6" weight. Higher the weight means the bigger the fish you can catch, but also you're going to have a stiffer action. So kind of like just spinner fishing, you kind of have to tailor the rod to the kind of fish you're doing. If you're fishing for massive salmon in Alaska versus little trout in a Colorado stream, they're going to want different rods.
Okay.
And then also the number of sections it breaks into. If you're going to be backpacking with it, you don't want 2 5-foot pieces. You want something that breaks down into 4 or 5 pieces.
I see.
That are way more compact.
Gotcha.
So price-wise, you're looking at probably for a starter rod around $100.
Okay.
And that goes upwards of a couple $1,000s. So
For a rod?
For a rod.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they get expensive. They are nice when they're expensive. My dad has one that's really nice that we call the Rocket, because it'll just cast line out as far as you want it to go. But just to get started, you don't need, this rod was around 150, 200 bucks just at Bass Pro or Cabela's, and it'll get you by.
That's awesome. So something weird is if you're like a traditional fisherman instead of a fly fisherman, it normally when you read the rod, it'll say 6 pounds or rated for 15-pound line or 15-pound braid or whatever it is. For fly rods, they don't say pound, they say 6 weight. But as far as I understand, and I just kind of confirmed with Trevor here, it's interchangeable for the most part.
Yeah, they're pretty similar. As long as you're using fly fishing stuff, it's gonna line up.
And what length of rod would you recommend?
Really, unless you're in really specific situations, whatever they have is going to be good. Around 9 feet, and you're
around 9 feet. Anything specific that we should look for in the reel?
Reels are another whole conversation of themselves, kind of like with spinner fishing. There's a whole range of different things, but you want to look at capacity of line.
Okay.
And you want to look at the quality of the bearings inside to see how smooth it's going to be.
Right.
And the drag capacity. This is going to control your drag.
Yep. Yep.
And you want to make sure that you have enough drag for the fish that you're going after.
So because this fly line is so thick, these reels, they look super beefy, but it's just because the diameter of this line is so much bigger that you need a bigger reel to house the same length of line.
Yep.
That's cool. Okay, so Trevor just let me know these reels are a little bit different, not just in size, but also they don't have an automatic back and forth. So when you're reeling, if you're not kind of distributing the line and directing it from side to side on this reel, it's gonna pile up in one spot. So if I'm holding it, or if I'm just reeling, you see how it's not moving? You gotta kind of direct it from side to side. All right, guys, well, we just wrapped up for today, kind of going over like the basics. This was kind of episode 1 of the fly fishing stuff. Special thanks here to Trevor for sharing his wealth of knowledge with us. Some of you guys probably know a lot more about this than I do, but for me, it was like my absolute first day with fly stuff, so I'm very grateful. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, no, happy to be here, really fun. And also look into the future, because probably I'll be forcing Casey to do some kind of a video about birding. I love birds.
All right, sounds good, man.